Okay, good morning, everyone. We are going to get started. It is 10 o'clock. Thank you for joining us. Again, this is the CRA study group presentation about the National Science Foundation. With me today presenting is Laura Lawson. And again, I'm Jessie King. We are both senior pre-award associates in the Office of Sponsored Programs at Virginia Tech. We were in your shoes last year. We took the CRA exam last November and passed. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, we promise, and it will be totally worth it. So we are going to dive in. We have quite a few things to get through today. Here we go. So here is a roadmap of our little adventure we're going to take about NSF. We're going to look at the background and organizational structure. We're going to go through the overview and proposal review and award cycle. We'll look at the merit review process. We'll look to understand the different funding opportunities, understand the different parts of a proposal. We'll look at the types of proposals and types of award, and we'll look at award management. And we will do questions at the end. So if you have a question, either save it till the end or put it in the chat, but we will do all the questions at the end. We should have a little time left. So let's begin. Let's look at the background and organizational structure of NSF. So the National Science Foundation is an independent federal agency created by Congress in 1950. It is the only federal agency whose mission includes support for all fields of fundamental science and engineering, except for the medical sciences. NSF funds approximately 25% of all federally supported basic research conduct by America's colleges and universities. If you want to learn more about the background of the National Science Foundation, I highly suggest you go to their website provided here to learn more. So for NSF, they receive about 50,000 submissions per year. This was based off of last year's numbers. Of those 50,000 submissions, they were only able to fund about 12,000 proposals. So that is about 27.5% of what they're able to fund. And of those that are funded, 1 in 4 actually go to new awardees each year. While PIs, on the other hand, will submit on average about 2.3 proposals for every 1 award they receive. NSF has a strategic plan called Building the Future, Investing in Discovery and Innovation. The strategic plan is for fiscal years 2018 through 2022. They have laid out 3 goals. The first is to expand knowledge in science, engineering, and learning, advance the capability of the nation to meet current and future challenges, and to enhance NSF's performance of its mission. The entire document can be found at this website on NSF's homepage under publications if you'd like to take a deeper dive into it. NSF is made up of 7 directorates. You have the biological sciences, computer and innovation science and engineering, geosciences, mathematical and physical sciences, social, behavioral, and economic sciences, education and human resources. Each directorate has an assistant director and is further subdivided into divisions, sections, and programs. It is very important to understand this organizational structure because it's these directorates that house the core disciplinary programs that set priorities in research and funding. So all proposals that are submitted have to fall into one of these 7 directorates. Also, it's very important to understand NSF's emphasis on transformative research. It is through transformative research that NSF hopes to accomplish the goals laid out in the strategic plan. Transformative research involves ideas, discoveries, or tools that radically change our understanding of an important existing scientific or engineering concept or educational practice, or leads to the creation of a new paradigm or field of science, engineering, or education. Such research challenges current understanding or provides pathways to new frontiers. We provided a copy of the whole transformative research section on the NSF website that covers the characteristics and challenges of transformative research, how it relates to the merit review process, which we'll get to a little later. That is a handout that should be on Canvas for you all.
Thanks, Jessie. So that was a quick overview of NSF as an organization, and now we're going to take a look at the review and award cycle for NSF. There are 3 phases in the review and awards cycle, and these are appropriately named phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. And we're going to look at each of these a little more closely now. In phase 1, you're looking at proposal preparation and submission. This starts when the opportunity is announced. You then have time to prepare the proposal and get it submitted and for NSF to receive it. That whole process takes about 90 days. It's good to note here that it is at the end of phase 1 where a quick review of your proposal will happen, and they are sort of looking for reasons to return without review before it goes on for the peer review. This might be because it's a duplicate of another proposal that's under consideration or has already been funded. It does not meet the NSF proposal preparation requirements or contain the required sections of the proposal, or perhaps you have not met the proposal deadline date. But it's very important to be careful to follow all the rules and regulations and guidelines so that this does not happen to your proposal. In phase 2, you're looking at review and processing of the proposal. A proposal will have reviewers selected and will then undergo a peer review. If it is deemed worthwhile, it then goes on to the program officer for review and recommendation, and ultimately it goes to the division director for a final review. The final phase is phase 3, award processing. If the proposal is deemed appropriate and they want it to be awarded, it goes on for a business review. And after that, the award is finalized. This step takes about 30 days. And the previous step in phase 2 of the full review takes about 6 months. So it's important to note that the whole process from the announcement of the opportunity through submission, through review, and then finalizing the award can take 7 months. So you need to plan your start date for the project appropriately.
Thanks, Laura. So now that you understand the review cycle, we can talk about the merit review process that is used during proposal review. I know it may seem like we're jumping the gun a little bit by discussing this, but it will help later when we look at the various components that make up a proposal. So the merit review process ensures all proposals are reviewed in a manner that is fair, competitive, transparent, and in-depth. There are 2 merit review criteria. The first one is intellectual merit. It asks, to what extent does the proposed activity suggest and explore creative, original, or potentially transformative concepts. The second one is called broader impacts, which encompasses the potential to benefit society and contribute to specific and desired outcomes. It is critical that these two criteria are addressed thoroughly in the proposal. We have included supplement material, again, it is on campus, that goes into these a little bit more. It is also important for you to know, if you are taking the CRA exam and you see the words broader impacts, intellectual merit, or transformative research, they are talking about NSF. Those are concepts that are very specific to NSF. So if you're trying to make notes of what's really important, like highlight star those concepts and what those mean, because those are very much NSF based. So how does the merit criteria fit into the review and process cycle? We'll go back and look at phase 2. The proposal first undergoes review by an external reviewer. External reviewers evaluate all proposals against both criteria. They consider what is the potential for the proposed activity to advance knowledge and understanding within its own field or across different fields. This is that intellectual merit section we're talking about. Or how does it benefit society or advance the desired societal outcomes? They also consider, to what extent do the activities suggest and explore transformative concepts? Is the plan well reasoned, well organized, based on sound rationale? Does it have a mechanism to assess success? How well qualified are the proposers? And are there adequate resources available to carry out the activities? They really want to know, are the PI and co-PIs actually able to do what they said they're going to do? Those evaluations are then passed on to your program officer. Program officers are considered subject matter experts in both the technical and programmatic areas. They conduct merit reviews of proposals and make recommendations to fund or decline a proposal based on peer reviewers' evaluations and their own expertise. They also consider ratings and comments given by external reviewers, as well as factors that may not have been considered by those reviewers. And they're often encouraged to recommend high-risk projects with the potential for transformative advances. Program officers also evaluate proposals in the context of their overall portfolio. They consider to support high-risk transformative advances, different approaches to significant questions, the capacity building in a new and promising research area, potential impact on human resources and infrastructure, NSF core strategies such as the integration of research and education and broadening participation, achievement of special program objectives, other available funding resources, and geographic distribution. We highly recommend the report on NSF's merit review process. This document is only 65 pages, but it goes more in depth on the whole process and how decisions are made. If you have a few extra moments, the link is on this page. Please take some time to go through that to review yourself with this process. After the review, the program officer makes recommendations and forwards it to the division director. Division directors are NSF executives. Their responsibilities include long-range planning, contributing to strategic goals and objectives, and providing stewardship of financial and other resources. They are also responsible for ensuring the integrity of the merit review and award process. Once the division director signs off on the program officer's recommendations, the proposal proceeds to the business office for award.
Thanks, Jesse. Now we're going to look at funding opportunities. NSF uses different mechanisms to communicate funding opportunities. These include program descriptions, program announcements or solicitations, and dear colleague letters. We have included examples of these in the handouts. And also note that at any time, scientists may submit unsolicited proposals to NSF. Going forward in this presentation, please note that if we say program announcement or solicitation, it could mean any of these mechanisms. That brings us to proposal preparation. There are many types of proposals, but we're going to cover the basic requirements for the most standard NSF proposals before discussing the variations. NSF requires electronic submission of proposals. This may be done either through an NSF system such as FastLane or research.gov. If you're submitting a proposal through either of those, you need to follow what we refer to as the PAP guide for submission on those two systems. Or proposals may be submitted to grants.gov. There is an NSF grants.gov application guide that you would need to follow when submitting proposals through the grants.gov system. You also need to, of course, follow the program announcement. The next item we're going to cover are the various sections of the proposal. We will go through these fairly quickly, and we are assuming FastLane preparation, although it does apply to research.gov proposals as well. The first section is the cover sheet, and there are 4 major components. The awardee organization and place of performance is the first information to be entered. The program announcement will also be collected, and the NSF unit of consideration. The remainder of the cover sheet requests information such as title, budget, duration, co-PI and PI information, and other important information for the proposal. The next section is the project summary. This is limited to 1 page, and there are 3 sections that must be completed: the overview, intellectual merit, and broader impacts. Note that this really is just a summary, and both broader impacts and intellectual merit may be expanded in the project description. If these 3 sections are not completed, the proposal can be returned without review. The next section is the project description. This is limited to 15 pages. It covers the statement of work and work plan, as well as the specifics for your methods and other details of the project. It must contain 2 sections labeled as broader impacts and results from prior NSF support. If those are not there, it can be returned without review. Other sections may be required by the program announcement as well. And this is the section where the description of work for any subawardees should be included. Next up is the biographical sketches or biosketches. Please note that for these, you must now use an NSF approved format. You can either complete these in Science CV or you can complete a fillable form offered by NSF, but those are the only two approved formats at this time. Bio sketches should be limited to 2 pages and are made up of 4 sections. It is important to note that under the products section, you should include persistent identifiers or URLs where possible. And it's also important to note that under synergistic activities, they want a list of distinct examples, up to 5 distinct examples, not an example with a listing of many other examples under it. That can cause return without review. Next up in an NSF proposal are the budget and budget justification. A detailed budget for each year is requested, and all expenses must be allowable, allocable, necessary, and reasonable. The budget justification is limited to 5 pages, and each subaward must have a separate budget and budget justification. If you look in section 2 of the PAP guide, you can find additional requirements. It is important to note here for the budget that NSF has a 2-month salary rule. Senior personnel can have no more than 2 months of their regular salary in any one year across all NSF funded awards. Make sure that you include your organization definition of the year in the budget justification, and don't request more than 2 months across all of your NSF submitted proposals. If it is anticipated that more time is necessary, you must disclose it in the justification and provide an explanation for this. Next up are other documents. These include things such as the current and pending support document. Like the biographical sketches, this must be on NSF approved format. Again, either Science CV or the NSF fillable form must be used. All resources that are available to the PI must be included, even regardless of their monetary value. This includes in-kind contributions. And the current and pending document should include the proposal that you are working on to submit. Also under other documents is facilities, equipment, and other resources. Of note here is that unfunded collaborators should be included in this document. It describes resources available for the project. Also under other documents, we have a data management plan. This has a 2-page maximum. And you really need to review the requirements for this document as they vary between directorate, division, and programs. There is also a requirement for a postdoctoral mentoring plan if the project includes a postdoc. There is a 1-page limit for this. Also under other documents, we have collaborators and other affiliations, the COA. There is a required NSF template, and this must be uploaded in Excel format. Finally, some other supplementary documents might include letters of collaboration. Be sure to follow the PAP guide for recommended language, or it can get returned without review. Documentation of use of human subjects, hazardous materials, vertebrate animals, etc. and other documents that might be required in the solicitation. Those are the only things allowed in this section. And finally, it is important to note that NSF accepts collaborative proposals, and there are two ways to submit these. Collaborative proposals have investigators from 2 or more organizations. Either the lead PI, lead organization, can submit one proposal, so it's a collaborative proposal from one organization, and the collaborators from other universities or organizations are treated as subawards. Alternately, the collaborative proposal may be submitted from multiple organizations. The lead organization submits a complete proposal with all of the sections we've just covered. The non-lead organizations submit their own information in their own proposal, including their budget justification, current and pending documents, and biosketches, and they link this to the lead organization proposal. Do note that if you do the second option, collaborative proposal for multiple organizations, that both organizations must submit using the same system. They must both use FastLane, or they must both use research.gov.
Thanks, Laura. That is so true about both being on the same system. So we're now going to look at the different types of proposals. Now that we know what makes up a proposal, we're going to go through the different types. And I'm just going to state it right now that this information is really important. We tried really hard to find the characteristics that make each type of proposal different. So if you're like me who have like flashcards, the information we provide is at least the very minimum you need to know about each type of proposal. So let's look at the first one. It's just your standard proposal. A standard proposal is just a regular proposal submitted in response to a typical announcement. This proposal will be prepared in accordance with NSF proposal guide and applicable to the opportunity announcement. You have to base your maximum or minimum dollar amount or duration based off what is in the solicitation. And this proposal is subject to standard merit review. These are the type of proposals many people submit all the time with all the different RFPs. So the next one is called a rapid. I've actually had a lot of these this summer, and you'll probably see why. Rapid response research proposals, also known as a RAPID, are used when there's a severe urgency with regard to availability of access to data, facilities, or special equipment for a quick response, research on natural disasters or similar unanticipated events. So, for example, I had a lot of faculty do rapids for the pandemic and for COVID. So that is something that is very relevant right now. So rapid proposals can only be up to $200,000 and can last only 1 year. Rapid proposal type must be selected on the cover page in FastLane. You must contact the NSF program officer for approval before submitting. And in rapid proposals, the description is limited to 5 pages. And they must clearly state why the proposal is of urgent nature and why rapid is the most appropriate type of proposal submission for supporting this work. Only internal merit review is required. So this does not go under the peer review. It's just reviewed by the program officer. And that helps speed it up. So that way they have a quicker turnaround for acceptance or declines and to get the awards out, because time is a major factor in rapid proposals. Our next one are called EAGRs. They are early concept grants for exploratory research. These are used to support exploratory work in its early stages on untested but potentially transformative research ideas or approaches. This work may be considered especially high risk, high payoff. eagers can be up to $300,000 and last for up to 2 years. On the proposal cover page, you must select eager as a type of proposal being submitted. You must have NSF program officers' written approval before submitting. This program description is limited to 8 pages and must include a clear statement as to why the proposal is appropriate for eager funding, why it does not fit in existing programs, and why it is a good fit for the eager program. Only internal merit review is required. External reviews may be obtained at the discretion of a program officer. So our next proposal type is called a RAISE, Research Advanced by Interdisciplinary Science and Engineering. These are used to support bold interdisciplinary projects that require substantial funding from more than one program or discipline, that promise transformative advances, and have the potential for discoveries that reside at the interfaces of discipline boundaries that may not be recognized through traditional review. A RAISE proposal can be up to $1 million and lasts 5 years. The project description must explicitly address how the project is better suited for RAISE than other regular review process. The prospective PIs must receive approval to submit a proposal from at least 2 NSF program officers in intellectually distinct programs whose expertise is the most germane to the proposal topics. This documentation must be provided and uploaded as a supplementary document in FastLane. As Laura talked about, there may be additional documents you have to upload in supplementary documents. This would be an example of an additional document required. Only a single proposal method submission will be allowed. Collaborators from other institutions must be treated as a subaward. So as Laura talked about the different collaborators options, you must use the first one where one person submits and everybody else is a subaward. RAISE proposal type must be selected on the cover page and only internal merit review is required. So our next one is called a goalie. Grant opportunities for academic liaison with industry. These seek to stimulate collaboration between academic research institutions and industry. Research should further scientific and engineering foundations to enable further breakthrough technologies with the potential to address critical and industry needs. So for a goalie, funds can only be used for university research educational activities and may support activities for faculty and their students and research associates in the industry setting. Funds are not permitted to be used to support the industrial research partner. So you may have your industry research partner as your co-PI, but they are not allowed to request funding. These must be submitted to an active funding opportunity or as a supplemental funding request to an existing award. And you also need to follow the PAC guide and the funding opportunity notice for other restrictions or regulations for a goalie. So our next one is called an Ideas Lab. These seek to support the development and implementation of creative and innovative project ideas that have the potential to transform research paradigms and/or solve intractable problems. NSF will issue a call for participants solicitation that describes the specific focus for the Ideas Lab. So this application will look a little different than your normal ones because your project description is only limited to 2 pages and they must explain the applicant's specific expertise and interest in the topic area. and it only requires a biosketch and current and pending to be submitted. They do not want you to submit a project summary, a reference, a budget justification, facilities, any of that. So I did a few of these last year and the application looked very small, but those are the only documents that they want you to submit. And it will be submitted as a preliminary proposal in FastLane. So our next one is called a phased facilitation awards for scientists and engineers with disabilities. Through this program, NSF seeks to reduce barriers to participation in research by providing a special equipment and assistance under these awards. NSF encourages persons with disabilities to pursue careers in science and engineering by stimulating the development and demonstration of special equipment that facilitates research work. These proposals, the funding requests are made in conjunction with regular competitive proposals or can be a supplement to additional funding requests. The nature, the purpose, and the need for the equipment or assistance need to be detailed. The program officer will make decisions on a case-by-case basis, and the PI will need to make sure they follow the PAP guide and the funding opportunity notice for any other special regulations or rules. So this next type of proposal is a conference proposal. NSF supports conferences that bring experts in special areas of science and engineering together. A conference proposal should be submitted at least 1 year before a conference. Merit review criteria apply. Some special requirements for these proposal types. In the project description has to have a statement of need, recent meetings, organizers, the location, and any other detail about the conference. And you also need to make sure you follow the PAP guide and funding opportunity notice for guidance on the proposal elements and allowable cost. The next type of proposal is called an equipment proposal. These are for specialized equipment for individual investigators, departments, or internal or external collaborators. One PI must be designated. There are special requirements for the project description. You need to follow the PAPPG, and please note that these proposals will compete with research and educational proposals, so they are all going for the same pot of money. NSF also offers travel proposals. So travel proposals are for domestic or international travel to participate in scientific and engineering meetings. University, professional society, or other nonprofit organizations may apply for funds to enable it to coordinate and support group participation in these meetings. It is important to know and to remember that documentation that funds were spent in accordance with the original intent of the proposal is required. They may be required to be submitted with reports and will be subject to audit. So if you have a PI who's traveling, remind them to get all their documentation while they travel, because going back after the fact, getting that stuff can be time consuming. So in a travel proposal, you have a cover sheet, the summary, project description, budget justification, current and pending, your facilities and other resources, data management. Those are all required. In your project description, it is limited to 15 pages, and it needs to include a statement of need, list of recent meetings, information on the locale and probable dates, statement of how the meeting will be organized and conducted, how the results will be disseminated, and result from prior support. So for travel proposals, it's important to have a very specific travel conference meeting in mind, because you do have to provide specifics to NSF about the place you are going. So our next one is called the center proposals. The centers focus on integrative learning, the frontiers of knowledge, and investing in a diverse set of partner organizations and individuals. So center proposals can last up to 10 years in duration. And these help contribute to NSF strategic plans, those goals we talked about earlier. They are subject to mid-award external merit review. And this one is really important. PIs need to contact the appropriate disciplinary program officer before submitting. I will tell you a story. I worked on one 2 years ago and they did not contact the program officer. And we got through a lot of it before realizing we didn't have the approval to go forward. So make sure your PIs contact them. So I know you thought this would never end, but this is our last research proposal type. It's called Research Infrastructure Proposal. These are for construction and operation of major research equipment and facilities. Proposals should contact the appropriate NSF program to discuss availability of funding and the appropriate funding mechanism in advance of proposal submission. Merit review applies. It is also important to read over the large facilities manual for the policies that apply to all large facility projects funded by NSF. So that is the last program type we have. And again, it's important to know the specifics about them and what makes them different, whether it's a maximum or a duration, or having to get approval for certain ones. That information is really important to know about each proposal type.
Thanks, Jesse. That's a lot of information. Hang in there, guys. We are almost through this. We're going to talk about types of awards now. This means your proposal has been prepared and submitted. It's been through the review process and has been selected for award. So now what kind of award can we expect? NSF has 3 different types of awards, and the first one is a grant. Grants are used when there will be minimal involvement by NSF during the project. With a grant as the award option, NSF agrees to provide the funding, and the grantee agrees to perform the project as proposed and manage the funds prudently. The next type of award is a cooperative agreement. These are used when the project will require more substantial involvement by NSF. With a cooperative agreement, NSF will advise, review, approve, and participate in the project activities, as well as monitor the agreement. The awardee still maintains overall control and direction of the project, but will have to obtain prior approval from NSF on certain decisions or milestones. Cooperative agreements are suitable when you have larger projects that may be more complex and have many participants, and NSF will be more actively involved in the management of these. One thing to note with cooperative agreements is that NSF can still suspend or terminate the agreement should it be necessary. And finally, the third option for an award is a contract. These are used when NSF needs to procure a study or research or logistics or support of some sort. It is important to note that for contracts, the PAP guide does not apply. Instead, there is a guide to NSF contracting process that you have to go by.
Awesome. Thanks, Laura. So our last stop on this little road trip will be about award management. And we're going to be really honest. Laura and I are both pre-award. We do not do a lot with award management, but we have identified areas that are extremely important. And it's very important that you take some time to go into the current PAP guide into part 2 under award management to go more in depth on the topics that we're going to go over. So we just want to be upfront. This is not really our level of expertise. And so if you have questions regarding this, it may take us a little bit longer to find the correct answer, but we're going to dive in. So you got your award. You went through the whole process. You found out you were going to get the award. How do you actually accept it? For most awards, simple drawing down on NSF funds is your acceptance. Once in a while, you will be required to submit a formal, maybe letter of acceptance of the award. And on those occasions, you will be notified that you need to do something more formal. For some reason, if you choose to not accept an award, you have to give written notice to the program officer. It's not one of those things you can just pretend, ignore that it'll go away. You have to let them know, for whatever reason, your university, your organization will not be accepting the award. NSF gives PIs the right to spend their funds to support their projects as outlined in the award notice. Such information in the award notice will include the total dollar amount, your end date, and your start date. But it's important to know that for the period of performance, your start date cannot be changed than what it states in your award notice. You may be able to change your end date if you get approval on continued support, such as a continuation, or if you get a no-cost extension. And you might ask yourself, what is a no-cost extension? Grantees may authorize a one-time extension for up to 12 months at no additional cost. They just need more time. They just need more time to do their scope of work. This is not an opportunity for them to spend out the rest of their money they have. It has to be to fulfill the duties outlined in their scope of work. These requests must be submitted via NSF's electronic system. So what if that 12 months isn't enough? You need more time. There's a thing called an NSF approved extension. This grants additional time beyond that 1 year no cost extensions. This request must be submitted through the NSF's electronic system as well, but you have to submit at least 45 days prior to the end date of the grant. And that end date is the date you got from your no cost extension. If you are submitting this less than 45 days, you must include a strong justification of why it's submitted late and not earlier. You also have to explain the need for the extension and include an estimate of the unobligated funds remaining and a plan for their use. So sometimes, as we all know, things happen, life happens, and it will affect an award. So when this happens, it is very important to talk to your program officer because you actually need approval for certain things, such as if you want to change the scope of work, you need prior approval before doing that. If there's significant changes, delays, or events of unusual interest, you got to talk to your program officer. Change of PI or add or change a co-PI, add or change a subcontractor, all need prior approval. If you are transferring a grant from one organization to another, you need to get NSF's approval before starting the process and working with the other institution. There's no point of starting that until you have the approval that it can be transferred to the other institution. NSF requires project reports for all assistance awards. These reports give updates on the progress being made and how funds are used. The first one we're going to talk about is the annual project reports. These address the progress in all activities of the project and should be submitted no later than 90 days prior to the end of the current budget period. Your next one is the final project report. This addresses the progress in all activities of the project. By submitting this report, the PI is saying to NSF, the work is complete. There are no additional needs. We don't need an extension. We don't need a supplement. We've completed what we promised. This needs to be done 120 days by the end of the end date. And the last one is the project outcomes report for the general public, a POR. This report gives a brief summary of the nature and outcomes of the project. This is what's going to be released to the public, published on their website. So it's for public knowledge. They have 120 days following the end date to complete this and give it to NSF so they can post. Okay, so there are certain standards that the grantee must follow. So I'm going to go a little bit into each one of these. Again, highly recommend you go to the part 2 in the PAP guide for more information regarding them. But the first one is the conflict of interest policy. The conflict of interest policy should require that each investigator disclose a responsible representative of the organization all significant financial interests of the investigator. That needs to be disclosed. The next one, it actually changed their name this year, responsible and ethical conduct of research. They added that ethical word in there this time, RECR. So the RECR involves not only the responsibility to generate and disseminate knowledge with rigor and integrity, but also the responsibility to conduct peer review with the highest ethical standards, diligently protect proprietary information and intellectual property from inappropriate disclosure, and treat students and colleagues fairly and with respect. So the next standard is the financial management system standards. This really just wants to ensure that your organization has the appropriate system to manage federal dollars and federal awards. Property management standards prescribe standards for managing and disposing of property furnished by the federal government or whose cost was charged to the project supported by a federal grant. And then the last standard, the procurement standard, are used by grantees in establishing procedures for the procurement of supplies and other expendable property, equipment, real property, and other services with federal funds. So that is a very brief overview of the different standards for NSF. And again, I think I've said it multiple times, but reiterate, part 2 of the PAP guide honestly could be a whole presentation in itself. There's a lot of good information in there about award management with very important information in there. So that is it. That is the end of this road trip about NSF. So we are going to go to questions. If you've been holding off on them, feel free to type them in the chat, but I'm going to kind of scroll up and address them one by one. Like I said, either Laura or I will hopefully address them. So that one's already addressed. How to receive a copy of the handouts issued. Those should be uploaded on the Canvas website. If you have problems, send an email to this website, to this email address, and we can get them to you. Your question about the direct cost or total cost, Tracy is correct. Those are your total cost, unless addressed in the RFP. For Anne, do Idea Labs proposal require a budget? Are they considered an LOI, or is there a second phase of selection process? So I'm going to be very honest. My people have never made it past phase 1. But at the time of submission for their call of participants, there is no budget. I think they're really using it as a way to find people who have this expertise to gather them. Like I said, I've never made it to part 2. Okay. This might be for you, Laura. Is it true that you can only charge 2.0 persons months in a salary, and that if you need to charge more than that, you need to explain why. I struggle because 2 person months does not equal a course buyout at my institution.
So my experience has been that, yes, that's what you're limited to, but you can explain if you need to request more. My experience has been more that PIs have quite a few NSF proposals out there, and they easily go over that 2-month request. And while it doesn't happen often, you do need to be prepared if all of those proposals are awarded. And then what do? Do you have to turn down funding? You don't want to do that. So, but yeah, if your course buyout is more, that seems like it might be a reasonable explanation to include in your justification.
Yeah. The more you can put in about that in your justification, the better it gives the reviewers and NSF a better picture of what you guys are going through. Okay. Are collaborative proposals via multiple organizations reviewed differently? What happens if one organization submits documents are not as persuasive? So no. So what happens is your lead organization will actually submit all of your technical things like your project summary, your description, stuff like that. When you're the non-lead, your stuff is very specific to your organization, like your facilities. What do you guys have? And stuff like that. And then when you submit it all, NSF will print the whole proposal out or pull the whole thing, and it links. So anything linked to that proposal, pull it all out. So to them, it looks like one big proposal. It is important though, if you have the time to kind of review your collaborative stuff, but I know we don't have time to review other institutions' collaborative stuff. You just hope that whoever your PI is working with has help, or at least can ask for help if needed.
In my experience with collaborative proposals is that the PIs often work very closely and craft the project description and the summary together, even though only the lead organization is submitting it. Yeah. So you hope that that's the case with these and that the Virginia Tech faculty have input on that.
That's very true. Can we use, yeah, if you would like to use our I know I literally will check my PI's current and pendings to make sure, and I'll do like a quick ad. I've had some who've literally been over that, and I'm like, what happens if you get them all awarded? And they're like, oh, I never thought about that. And so it's important that you look at anything, you know, if they're a co-PI or a PI, because they need to have enough time. I don't know if that helps your question. Okay, NSF SBIRs do not have the 2-month requirement. Should they be included in other support when applying to a traditional NSF support? Are you asking if you should include them on your current and pending? Because you have to include that, all of that in your current and pending information. And it's also important to note that anything in an RFP will trump the PAP guide. That happens, that goes across the board. I know we're not supposed to teach the exam, but wondering how much of the exam is specific to agency rules, and is it focused on NIH, NSF, DoD, or will other agency specific will also be included? Okay, so I'm going to be 100% honest. NSF is like my wheelhouse. I do NSF all day long. My test last year had very limited NSF stuff, but other people's version of the test had NSF stuff. So, and yeah, between NIH, DoD, NSF, they will cover everything. It's kind of the luck of the draw which one.
Yeah, I mean, so Jesse and I took the test at the same time at the same location last year. And we had two very different tests. I think my experience was similar. I probably had 3 or 4 questions on NSF on my test, but it's impossible to tell what you will get on yours. You definitely need to know NSF, NIH, I think DoD as well. It's all sort of a blur.
And the more specifics, like I kind of hammered in on those program types, proposal types, that kind of information across the board is important to know. So when you, I think next week or in a few weeks, when you do NIH, they're going to go over proposal type. That is also very important to know what makes them different, you know, because it might not be a question, it might be a possible answer to a question. And so if you know, like a rapid can only be 1 year and it's talking about something that is 3 years long, you know, that's not an option to choose.
Very good point.
Because I know it's overwhelming. We totally understand, but the more specifics on these stuff is you can remember, the better. Yes, NSF and NIH are specifically mentioned in the body of knowledge. Your other one, the Department of Ed or NEA, or some of these other departments like USDA or what's your favorite? USF, GF,
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
You know, there may be a question or two about the small ones, but the bigger ones I felt were more prominent in your testing. But they are also the bigger ones that have a lot more weird things. But don't get scared. It's just, you know, learning and figuring out ways to remember them all. I think, is there any other questions or did I miss something? Again, if you think of a question after the fact, you're more than welcome to email the email address that's online. Laura or myself or Eric, we'll get back to you as soon as we can. It's actually like prime NSF season for me. So NSF is all I do right now.
But that's okay, because I have a little more time at the moment to handle questions.
It's the same like the GRE test. If a question is answered wrong, the next question may be easier. Oh, I have no idea about that.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Because I think Eric will go over, or has gone over, you know, there's different versions of the test. So as Laura and I stated, you know, we were together in the same location. We had different versions, and those are already set. And I will tell you, it's so important to make sure you eat before you go and that you are well hydrated. Like I actually kind of scoffed at that suggestion before, but it was so important because by the time I got out of there, I was so hungry. So it's important to make sure you are mindful, like you're ready for it.
And I think another thing that I noticed with the test, it's easy, it's set up so that you can go through and answer what you know. It's not like you have to answer every question on the first time through. You can go back and review and change answers or answer the ones you aren't certain of. So I highly recommend go through, answer everything you know quickly, and then you can backtrack and go in and check those ones that you weren't certain about.
That is so true.
That was really helpful for me.
So the next question, how representative of the exam is a practice test? Very, very well.
Yeah.
Very well, especially how the questions are written. You'll hear this over and over. They don't want to trick you, but they word things in a way that make you think. So if you are someone who reads really quickly, Remember to take some time and read thoroughly through the question and the answers.
Yeah, slow down your reading. I am very guilty of that.
Me
I
too.
read too quickly. And I'd read through and think I knew what the question was and look at the answers, and then I'd have to go back and read the question again because it didn't make sense.
Yes, yeah, no, that practice test is very much a very good representation of the actual exam. Yeah, it was an experience, but you all do great. Honestly, this program is really going to help narrow what to focus on. And if you just take the time to study a little by little, you should do fine. How hard were the math problems? Did you have had to do a full budget? How detailed was it?
I think the example test shows some questions. It's we never did a full budget, but there were lots of questions on direct costs and indirect costs and cost share and how you calculate those. And I'm the wrong person to ask because I love math, and so those were easy for me. But I thought they were fairly straightforward. It just, you have to think about them a little bit. But I think if you've run across some sample math questions, those are probably very helpful for what the exam could look like.
Yes. And I think was it the first session or whatever went over the math, that I listened to that, I think last year multiple times, because like we know how to do it, but it's always good to know how to show your work so it makes sense. Did you feel you had enough time overall, or were you feeling rushed? So we had very different experiences. I used my entire time, mostly because I was getting very nervous and started second guessing. So I just got up and left. But
and I went through, I don't even know, how long was the test?
Was it 4 hours?
4 hours. I got through fairly quickly and went back and double checked and said there's no point in second guessing myself, and I walked away probably after 2 hours.
Yeah.
So yeah, it really depends on how you are with test taking more than it does what the test is like itself. No, that's just true. Just how we go into these things.
Yes. Do you know how many questions you got wrong? You don't know your information of how you did until the very end, until like the testing period has closed, and you'll get notified if you've passed and all that kind of stuff. But like when you leave there, you won't know how many you got right or how many you got wrong. Do you know the sample test has been recently updated? I asked, I took it a couple years ago. That would be a good question for Eric. I'm not quite sure. Because the other thing is, if you were with us last year during this presentation, it might have looked similar, but NSF specifically had a lot of new things this year. So make sure, and this goes along with any topic, make sure you're always looking at the most updated information, whether it's a guide or a fact sheet, because things have been changing a lot in the past 12, 16 months.
In terms of the calculator, yes, the testing center provided us with a sheet of paper and a calculator for the math questions when we took it.
Yeah, and it's a very basic calculator, like one that you might find at like the Dollar Tree for $1 or something. Yeah. Were there other resources besides this course and the Quizlet you made use of and or would recommend, or were these your main sources?
I think looking through the body of knowledge was important as well. Obviously, that's a huge document with a lot of information. I know I didn't get through all of it, but if I remember correctly, a few things I picked up from the body of knowledge that were not covered in this course or possibly in Quizlet were things that popped up on the test that I took. So try to take some time and at least glance through that. because there is different information that's covered.
Yeah, I use the Quizlets and I use this and I like made my own flashcards that I literally brought with me everywhere. Like my husband and I would take a road trip and he would listen to something and I'm like in the car just reviewing stuff. The other thing that we both did is we asked people who in our office who had taken it, you know, what they remembered or if they were like, oh, this is something really important. So we got feedback from them because we had a few who just recently took it before we did. So that helped. When you got the results, I don't remember they tell us how many we got wrong. I honestly don't remember. I just looked to see if I passed because I was not confident at all. You were more confident than I was like.
I feel like that they did tell you how many you got right. And basically, honestly, I don't remember the number either. I'm like, okay, that's enough to pass.
That was like our only goal is to pass. If I actually remembered, I would share. I honestly, and that information is still at the office.
Exactly. Yeah, we're remote.
Remote, yeah. Do you know what questions you got right or wrong when you received your scores? No. And do you receive your scores or is it just a pass or fail? Like I said, I don't remember, but they probably
there's a score and it does tell you how many you got right and thus how many you got wrong. But like Jesse, I really don't remember. It was enough to pass and that information's still back in the office.
Yeah, and I just know after the test, there were certain questions that you just remembered. And I literally came back and asked our director, how would you have answered this question? Because I knew like, you know, there were certain things that you're just not going to know, and that's okay. But I kind of would have liked to know what once you got wrong.
Yeah.
Can you please recommend additional resources to study for the CRA test? Like Laura said, the body of knowledge, really go through all this information. If you're someone who likes just to like listen to a podcast, instead of listening to a podcast, listen to these presentations over and over and over. It might be a little boring. Take the practice test. Know where your areas of weaknesses are. So like for me, NSF is not an area that I struggled with because I do it all the time, but NIH is something I don't do very often. So I spent a lot of time on NIH. So those are really, utilize this and utilize the knowledge from the presenters because some of the people have been doing this for a long time and have really good insight. And then just use each other if you have questions or support. Like I said, Laura and I were lucky enough to study and take it together. So we were able to work together and support each other because it can get overwhelming. So having a support system, even if there's no one else at your office, maybe tell your supervisor or somebody and they can help support you and keep pushing you toward that goal. Because I think honestly, if you take the time to study, you're gonna do fine. Do you get the full practice test to review and see your weak areas, or do you just take it and get a score? So the practice one I did, I just printed off and
I think it was the one available for printing that I looked at too. I think there is one. You can pay to take one and I didn't
do that either.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of up to you if you want to pay for the practice test, or there is one I think through this program. It's just like a print off. And that's kind of what we both used. Okay. Let me. Is NIH going to be covered by Virginia Tech? I think it is. Is it next week or 2 weeks? I don't remember. But I do know the next week. So the presenters doing that are extremely knowledgeable. And I say that because I will go to them when I am stuck on NIH to get their input. So they are very, very, very knowledgeable. It is overwhelming. So take it little by little.
And another thing with the body of knowledge, if you're pre-award, maybe focus just on the post-award stuff or the contracts pieces. What, if you're pre-award, you know the pre-award stuff pretty well by this time. This is a great refresher for a lot of it for us. It keeps it at the forefront of your mind. But for me, when I looked into the body of knowledge, I was really looking at those areas where I knew I didn't have proficiency. So for me, it would be the post-award process, the contracts process, and I found that to be helpful.
Oh, the uniform guidance. Oh, sorry, that was like my least favorite topic. But that's again, I think that was another one I put on repeat as like a podcast that I listened to while working. And trying to just understand how it's made up and the different sections, piece by piece, because that section is also very important to know.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And I also did not find it exciting. So maybe that also is why it was hard to study. So we did not read it cover to cover, but our coworker, who also took it last year, who also passed, she did, but she went to the beach. So that was her like beach reading. I don't think I would have chosen that as my beach reading, but she actually did. We did not. I just listened to the presentations. I went through it and just learned the basics because I knew if I tried to remember it all, it was going to push other things out of my brain.
Yeah. Same here. I tried to memorize which sections covered which topics kind of thing. And the other pieces that were included in the presentation, I reviewed it a couple of times and that was more than enough. I find the uniform guidance almost unreadable just because it's so tedious.
That's a really good term.
I don't know how else to say it. It puts me to sleep very quickly.
Okay. Debbie, I think Eric should be able to help you how to access the Canvas site.
In the practice exam, I feel like I found that on the CR, not on our site, but on the RAC site, maybe. There may have been an example exam that I found on the RAC site. I know I found it somewhere. Let me go back through my notes and I'll see if I can figure out where that was.
Yeah,
but they probably update that frequently. Like especially when we go from start in with uniform guidance, I'm sure they've updated that.
Yeah. But yeah, because like I said, a lot of things have changed in the past 12 to 16 months, and the uniform guidance has even been around a little bit longer than that. But a lot of the sponsors, like NSF specifically, they took out intellectual merit as a required part in your project description. That's a big change. The SciCV printable formats is a huge change. And I know like NIH had other things too. Okay. So again, if you think of anything after the fact, please don't hesitate to email us. We will answer them. You are all going to do great. I know it's very overwhelming, but utilize these resources, set aside time to study. I know that this is extremely hard because we all have a lot of weird things happening in our life, professionally and personally because of COVID. So please take that time to study. And we had a lot of fun going over NSF with you all today.
Good luck on the test, everybody.